Fellas, there are some people in the UFC that have managed to become champion through a pretty easy route, and then there's also been people that have had to work extremely hard to be a UFC champion. Now, don't get me wrong, I know it's very hard to be a UFC champion. I'm not saying in any way that it's easy, but today we're going to be picking if there was one route to becoming a UFC champion that was the easiest possible way. We're going to be figuring that out in this video. Now, one thing I want to disclaim is we're not going to be including like women's divisions and stuff because obviously it's a lot easier to become a champion in the women's division than it is in the men's. So I'm only going to be doing this exclusively to the men's. But yeah, if you agree with these takes, please let me know. And if you disagree, again, let me know. But we're going to start off with the first step to becoming the easiest. Well, the easiest step to becoming a UFC champion first is actually getting into the UFC. Now, to get into the UFC, you need to be good at trash talking. If you're good at trash talking, because at the end of the day, UFC is a business. They're going to hire people who can promote. So if you're good at trash talking, of course, your chances of getting into the UFC are going to be much higher. I mean, you've got people like Paddy Pimblett who have managed to get into the UFC. Trash talking or being able to sell yourself, maybe not necessarily trash talking, but at least being charismatic will at least give you a huge boost in getting into the UFC. And then it kind of contradicts itself because the next point is be a Dagestani wrestler. Now, Dagestanis aren't really known for trash talking, so we might have to be the first ever Dagestani trash talker. But I think being a Dagestani wrestler with good cardio is important because, first of all, being a Dagestani wrestler, it's kind of a cheat code to fight in. If you're a Dagestani wrestler, you can beat a lot of people. You can beat 90% of the population. And I know it's more than just Dagestani wrestling. And the reason I've said with good cardio is because we don't need any more Abbas Magomedovs who can't, Dagestanis who can't really go past one round. So we need to be a Dagestani wrestler who can trash talk, being able to sell yourself and then being able to win in the octagon. Just yeah. And then another thing is you need to be able to get wins on the most uncompetitive promotions. Obviously, we don't need to go from Bellator to UFC. We just need to be on some uncompetitive promotions because the UFC don't care about the promotion. They just care about the highlights. If you're making highlight reels against bums on these random promotions, UFC are going to look at that and think, yeah, let me sign this guy. It's going to be a Sean O'Malley, Dana White moment where Dana White's creaming over Sean O'Malley. So be good at trash talking, be able to sell yourself, have a dominant style. I think Dagestani wrestling is a very dominant style with good cardio. And yeah, just get wins on uncompetitive promotions. Like Val Woodburn, for example. Val Woodburn was literally on a promotion that looked like it was on someone's like back garden. And he managed to get on the main card of a huge pay-per-view just by that. And he managed to fight Bo Nickel. Didn't go his way, but that's a good example of someone. So all that, and that's steps into actually getting into the UFC. Now, step two, when you're in the UFC, these are going to be the first steps in the UFC. So when you've been signed to the UFC, the first steps is for me to fight in the middleweight division because for me, as a man, the middleweight division is the easiest division. As in, like, the people in the middleweight division are the least competitive. Now, to put this into perspective, rank number 8 at lightweight is Arman Sarukian. Rank number 8 at bantamweight is Song Yadong. Rank number 8 at middleweight is Derek Brunson. This is what we're talking about here. You could also say that light heavyweight is quite uncompetitive and so is heavyweight, but I'm going to go with middleweight because it just is mid. But yeah, the middleweight division, I think it's the easiest division. There's a couple people in there. There's obviously people like Adesanya and Hamzat, but we're going to talk about them in a minute. But yeah, fight in the middleweight division of the UFC and essentially just fight cans until you reach top 15. Like I said, if you're a trash talker and you're a big star, or at least you're building yourself as a star, the UFC aren't going to put you against killers. They're not going to put you against people that they know you're going to beat. They're going to put you against people that they're pretty confident you can take out, which is why I say just pretty much just fight cans until you reach top 15. So 3 or 4 fights in the UFC and you should be there. And like I said, you need to actually do good against these cans as well. Like, we don't need no Paddy Pimblett, Jared Gordon situations where Paddy Pimblett gets gifted all the fights that he wants and still manages to fumble it. We need to be getting some solid wins here. So fight cans until you reach top 15 in the middleweight division. And that probably is the easiest start in anyone's UFC career. And to be honest, Bo Nickel is kind of doing that right now. He's in the middleweight division. He literally just got a win over Val Woodburn, who came off one of the most uncompetitive promotions. And Bo Nickel has like 5 MMA wins, so he's kind of got an easy route to the UFC rankings. But yeah, just fight cans till you get to the top 15. And then number 3, third steps is climbing the rankings. Now, let's say you're rank 15 or you're somewhere ranked in the UFC in the middleweight division. Now you just need to climb the rankings. And one thing I want to say is I'm aware that obviously the rankings aren't going to be the same, but I'm going to be basing the rankings. Let's assume that the rankings are what they are now. So Derek Brunson currently is ranked 8. So I think fighting and beating Derek Brunson is the first step. Now, let's say you're ranked 15 or ranked 14 and you need a big fight and you want to fight a ranked opponent. I think the easiest ranked opponent, at least someone who's high ranked, is Derek Brunson. He's terrible. He's got cardio for about 2 rounds. His wrestling's extremely sloppy. He only just about beat Darren Till because that fight was turning south, but Darren Till's fight IQ ended up making him lose the fight. His striking is some of the worst striking I've ever seen. He fights like a grandma. Derek Brunson is one of the easiest people to beat. And like I said, rank number 8, imagine being at lightweight and having to face Arman Sarukian or Song Yadong. You've got to beat Derek Brunson. If you can't beat Derek Brunson, you're never destined to be champion. So go out there, beat Derek Brunson, who hasn't won since 2021, and the last win he got over was Darren Till. He got mauled by Jared Cannonier, mauled by Dricus du Plessis, got destroyed by Adesanya, destroyed by Whittaker, and he's going to get destroyed by Roma Dilidze soon as well. So beat Derek Brunson, and now that you've beaten Derek Brunson. And to be fair, if you're a Dagestani wrestler and you've got good takedown defense, you just need a little bit of striking. All you need is the most basic level of striking, and that's why I've said Derek Brunson, because stylistically he should be pretty easy. And then the next fight, now you've beaten Derek Brunson. Now we're talking about one fight away from a title shot. So you need one fight, and then you've got the deserved title shot that you wanted. I say fight and beat Marvin Vettori. He's quite possibly one of the easiest people to beat in the... Well, I wouldn't say easy, but... I mean, there's people like Robert Whittaker, Dricus du Plessis, Jared Cannonier, all these killers in the division. Marvin Vettori is probably one of the easiest to beat that's going to give you a title shot. I was thinking Paulo Costa, but Paulo Costa, if you're a wrestler, is stylistically quite tricky. And plus, I'm not sure beating Paulo Costa gets you a title shot, so I'm going to go with beating Marvin Vettori. And yeah, beat Marvin Vettori in whatever fashion you want. You can do it in a 5-round beatdown like Jared Cannonier, or whatever, you can finish him quickly. But beat Marvin Vettori. And one thing I want to clarify is hopefully by this time Adesanya has left the UFC. Because Adesanya's career has been pretty straightforward for him. It's been, I don't want to say easy, but he's looked really good because his opponents are uncompetitive as hell. He's had to face Jared Cannonier in recent fights. He's had to face Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier. Fair enough, the Robert Whittaker fight, but I mean, in the rematch, that was a questionable win. He got a knockout win over Pereira, that's fair enough. But what I'm saying is the middleweight division just isn't that great of a division. So hopefully Adesanya by this point, maybe he's fought Strickland and Dricus du Plessis, and maybe he's retired from the sport by this point, because let's be honest, Adesanya hasn't got too much fights left. So hopefully Adesanya's left. And then we've got the number 4, becoming champion. Now, to become the champion, I'm not going to go over why I think Khamzat loses to Costa. I've explained it in multiple videos now, but let's hope that Khamzat has lost to Paulo Costa at UFC 294, and he's no longer in title talks. Or maybe by this point, let's say you've beaten Brunson, Khamzat's on his run-up. But what you want to do is you want to wait around until you're one of the few people ready to fight for a belt. And I say this because if you're a promotable guy, look at Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland does not deserve a title shot over Adesanya. It's not even a competitive fight. But just because he's good at talking, and just because he's charismatic and he's a fun guy, they've just going to match him. They've matched him against him, and that's what I think you should do in this scenario here. If you can trash talk well, and you're charismatic, and you can talk well, and you can promote well, then if there's like a spare spot for a title fight, they're probably going to give it to you as long as you're beaten. And let's say you're undefeated at this point in the UFC as well. If you've done all that, it's going to be hard to deny you a title shot. Now, obviously, you want to accept the title shot, and I think the people you're going to be facing will either be, let's say it's right now in modern MMA, or maybe a little bit in the future, and Adesanya's retired. The only people I can see as of right, because I can't predict the future, I'm going to assume that Dricus du Plessis or Cannonier is going to be next in for a title shot. So let's say you've got to fight Dricus du Plessis or Cannonier to win the belt. That's quite possibly the easiest out of all of them in the middleweight. That's quite possibly the easiest route you can, or easiest title fight you've got. And I'm not saying they're easy opponents to beat, but I mean, who else? I think you'd rather fight those than people like Adesanya or, I don't know, Khamzat Chimaev. So they would be tough fights, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, listen, if you're in a title fight in the UFC, it's going to be difficult, but I think those two are quite literally probably in the top end of middleweight, the easiest people. Dricus du Plessis, you just have to be able to, You just got to be ready. He's not going to quit. I don't know. You've got to find something that's going to break him. He does look a bit dodgy, does Dricus du Plessis. He's not the most technical guy. And Jared Cannonier, he's lost multiple times before, so you can look at those losses. But again, I need to see more from Jared Cannonier because he destroyed Marvin Vettori, but before that, he did look quite dodgy. So I don't know. If you're a Dagestani wrestler though, and you manage to take Jared Cannonier down, that should be good. But obviously Dricus du Plessis, he's a decent wrestler, so that'll probably be a tougher fight. But yeah, if your title fight is against Dricus or Cannonier, I think that's probably one of the easiest title fights you can get in the UFC. So yeah, that is my route of the easiest route to become champion. Please let me know if you agree with this or if you disagree. Personally, I think this is like quite possibly one of the easiest ways to become champion. And I'm not saying it's easy to become champion, but if you had every single way to become champion and your career had to pan out in one way, I think this one would be the easiest way. But yeah, please let me know if you agree, and thank you for watching.